how's it going everyone? This is the Anime Man. So a while back I made a video called Anime versus Manga, which is better? Where I discussed the extremely pointless and never-ending argument of whether one entire medium of entertainment is better than the other, because that's fucking possible to do, right? Because every single living person in the world agrees that pizza is ultimately better than sushi, right? Fuck off. Burgers for the win. Well, today I'd like to tackle yet again another one of these impossible to answer and absolutely 100% completely subjective questions that have been floating around on anime forum sites. Is the manga always better than the anime? Now, upon primary viewing of different forum sites and different anime streaming sites, the general consensus is yes. Most people do believe that the manga version is generally better than its anime counterpart. And while I'm completely aware that it is quite impossible to give a definitive answer to a completely subjective question like this, I thought it'd be interesting to go through the reasons as to why it is always better, why it's not always better, and why it's really neither. So first, let's go through the reasons as to why, yes, the manga is always better. Firstly, as you're all probably well aware of most anime adaptations, as the name suggests, they are adapted from their manga counterpart. Of course, with modern anime, there are also adaptations from things like light novels, just regular novels, video games, etc. But for argument's sake, let's just stick to manga adaptations, which conveniently enough is what encompasses most of anime adaptations. The biggest difference I can see between manga and anime is its flexibility. The anime adaptation is a lot more time constrained with limited number of episodes to flesh out and expand a pre-written story. These time constraints expand anywhere in modern anime from 12 to 24 episodes, with the exception of more episodes for bigger series depending on how popular its manga and anime counterparts are. Thus, most anime adaptations tend to compress a story, its development, its characters, and all that to fit that time constraint, compared to its manga counterpart where it can really take its time to flesh out all of that for as long as the original author desires. Of course, that's not to say that manga authors are completely free of all time constraints concerning manga, as usually if an anime is serializing in a particular magazine, how it usually works is the popularity of said series is compared to all other series running simultaneously within that magazine, and depending on where the popularity stands within the magazine, the longer usually the author has to continue that story. In other words, once the popularity of a manga series goes down to the bottom of that magazine, that's when the author really has to start worrying and finishing up his story before he is booted out of said magazine and replaced with a new story. But even all of that is not as pre-planned as it is with anime timeframes, and so it is still a lot more flexible compared to its anime counterpart. Another point which I think seems pretty clear to most people, and is what I find most people using to the argument towards yes, the manga version is always better, is that the anime tends to use a lot of filler. While some anime series have too little time to flesh out its story for the number of episodes it is given, most anime have a little too much episodes to work with, and so they have to fill in all the gaps with nonsensical filler bullshit, which as anime fans, both young and old, will know is really fucking annoying and pointless for us. Unless you're into that kind of nonsensical filler, in which case you probably have a ball with all of this. I mean, not that I'm judging, but this tends to happen with anime series based off of manga adaptations which are still serializing on their own magazine, or have just started serializing, gotten a huge popularity boost right from the beginning, and the anime industry looks at it and goes, this is really popular right now even though it just started, we need to make this into an anime series and cross-promote this shit. And then in the end, the anime ends up catching up to the manga, and since the anime has caught up to the manga, and there isn't enough original source to fill in, it has to be like, oh shit, make up some shit while we wait for the manga to go on. Which unfortunately 9 times out of 10 ends up making an anime with a terribly rushed and fucked up ending. By the way, I fucking hate every single anime out there that ended up having a shitty and rushed ending. Fuck every anime that has a shitty and rushed ending. Tenjo Tenge, Dead Man Wonderland, like 900 other anime series. I'm looking at all of you. Now let's go through the reasons why no, the manga isn't always better. First and foremost, and this completely depends on which manga series you are adapting into an anime, some stories from manga just tend to work better in animation using things like sound and visuals. A lot of atmospheric and experimental shows like Mushishi, Fully Cooley, and Akira tend to work better in an animation format. And I believe this is because audio and visual atmospheric techniques manage to pull out the emotions and feelings and representations out in a much nicer and concise way. This can be also said for manga based off of music like Nana and Beck. However, some can argue that the flow and execution of story from those particular series really kind of negate the feeling of wanting to actually hear the music. The music almost becomes irrelevant depending on the story in question. But again, this is all personal preference. If you much prefer to hear the music in Nana and Beck versus just looking at the still panels, then you would obviously say that the anime version was better. Secondly, I found that some anime adaptations tend to pull its story from its original manga counterpart in a completely different direction, which actually works nicer or is a lot more interesting than its original source material. In my opinion, most anime based off of 4-koма manga or 4-panel manga are actually a lot more enjoyable and entertaining to watch as an anime, because I believe in its anime adaptations, most of the time they make the comedy and story flow a lot nicer compared to 4-panel manga, which have clear starts and clear stops. Now look, I love 4-koma manga as much as the next person, but I actually think the anime adaptations of certain 4-koma manga like Lucky Star, K-On!, and Seitokai Yakuin Domo just tend to work a lot nicer in anime. Other examples of pulling stories in different directions include a lot of series done by Studio Shaft. Studio Shaft took series like Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei and Arakawa Under the Bridge in rather unique and interesting visual ways, where they use their own unique animation styles and cuts to kind of turn these series into a lot more of a hallucinogenic and very trippy and experimental kind of animation, which I think adds another layer of entertainment and enjoyment to an already hilarious set of series. And that's the reason why I fucking love Studio Shaft. It is also worth noting, however, that these kinds of ambitious changes in animation and art style may actually backfire for a lot of people who are not quite used to these different changes based on their manga counterpart. Examples including the anime adaptations for series like Ajin and Akunohana, where its animation and art style changed so much from its original manga counterpart that it actually pushed away a lot of people from its anime adaptation, and eventually led to people calling its anime adaptations crap. I personally quite enjoyed both anime adaptations, but you know, that's just me. I'm fucking weird, aren't I? So now that we've covered both pros and cons, let's meet in the middle and discuss why neither the anime or manga version is better. First of all, and I can't stress this point enough, better execution of a shitty story does not make that adaptation good. I've heard some people say that the manga version of said series is better than its anime adaptation because its anime adaptation was crap. But it doesn't really matter if the anime adaptation is crap or you say that the manga version is better when the original manga version is also crap. Akamega Kill, I'm looking at you. Secondly, and this one is quite important, it really depends which came first. Most of the time the manga comes first and then is adapted into an anime, but there are also a lot of examples of the anime coming out first and then it turning into a manga. But since, as I said, most of the time the manga comes first and is turned into an anime, that might be the reason why most people say that the manga version is better. So it's not really the manga version is better than the anime, it's more the one that came first is better than the one that followed. Thirdly, and this kind of ties in with the second point, it depends on which medium you were introduced to said series from. And by that, I mean, were you introduced to Lucky Star through its manga, or were you introduced to it through its anime? Most people will point to the one that they were introduced to and will say that one is better, and then they'll look at the other version and say, nah, this first one was better. There's usually more of a bias towards what you initially watched versus what you you watched after that. Because the one that you are introduced to is a completely new experience for you. Because this is the first exposure to said series, it is completely new and you can look at it through a fresh eye. However, it's hard to praise your second exposure to the same series because you already are aware of what the series is like. You are already aware of its story, its characters, how it plays out, all the plot twists that it might have, all the comedy, all the jokes that it might have. So it's not as fresh as what you initially were introduced to. For example, if you watch the anime adaptation of Another first, it's kind of hard to stare wide-eyed in wonder at all the plot twists by reading the manga or its original novel series, because you are already aware of all of the stories based off the anime, and so clearly you are going to say that the anime version was better because it was a completely fresh look at the series for you versus its manga or novel counterpart. Thus, even though I will argue that even though I watched the anime first, I actually preferred the novel because I believe it had much more of a better flow of story and a better exposition method, most will argue that the anime version or the manga version was better because that was the first thing that you were exposed to. You see, it's all a matter of perspective and personal bias. So the bottom line of all of this is that light novels for the win. Fuck manga and anime. Now, in all seriousness though, let me know what you guys think about the arguments that I laid out in this video. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And let me know overall, after hearing all of the arguments in this video and all the arguments in the comments below, let me know what you personally think. Do you think that the manga is always better than the anime or not? Anyways guys, thanks for watching. As always, like, favorite if you enjoy, subscribe